Hello, welcome to Planet Poetry. My name's Robin Houghton. Now we're bringing you another archive episode today. Back in October 2024, Peter spoke with Danez Smith about their electrifying collection, Bluff. We thought you'd like to hear this again, particularly as Danez's home city of Minneapolis is in the news right now, and all our thoughts are with the people of Minnesota. So let's hear what Danez had to say to Peter.
Danez Smith is the author of 3 collections, including Homie and Don't Call Us Dead. They have won the Forward Prize for Best Collection, the Minnesota Book Award in Poetry, the Lambda Literary Award for Gay Poetry, the Kate Tufts Discovery Award. Danez's poetry and prose has been featured in Vanity Fair, The New York Times, The New Yorker, GQ, Best American Poetry, and on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Danez Smith, welcome to Planet Poetry.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be back on my home world.
Which state are you in?
I live in Minnesota, which is almost Canada. I think a lot of us would like to be Canadians. And I'm in Minneapolis, which is right across the river from the city I grew up in St. Paul.
Yeah, I had a good friend that was born in Minneapolis. He kept talking about the coldness.
It keeps the bad people out.
He, like everyone else, talks about Prince. He's kind of the most famous export after yourself now, isn't he?
I think before myself. But, we got a couple of things. We got Prince, Charles Schwartz, who's the creator of the Peanuts, and Charlie Brown.
Really? Yeah.
He actually went to my same high school many decades before.
Well, actually, talking about Charles Schultz, picking up your book, Bluff, you notice straight away there's such a visual impact to it. Innovative forms and great blocks of black colour with white out of black and thick timelines or roads going through several pages. Did you think of the visual impact it would have when you were putting it together, or was it sort of a happy accident?
I don't know if I necessarily set out to intentionally have a lot of visual work. I have dabbled in visual poetics before. There's a lot of experiments that I did, especially in grad school. There's a small fingerprint of like some type of like visual play going on, I think, in a lot of my collections. I think for this one, where so much of the process of it was me coming back into relationship with poetry, having not written for a long time. It was like a sort of 2 years without poetry in between. For me, that was the longest I've ever went without feeling connected to the form. I had to pick up new tools, right? So here was this visual thing that I played around with before that I found myself leaning on more.
I wanted to start with Less Hope.
This is Less Hope. Apologies. I was part of the Joy Industrial Complex. Told them their bodies were miracles and they ate it up. Sold someday. Made money off soon and now. Snuck an ode into the elegy. Forced the dead to smile and juke. Implied America. Said destroy but offered nary step nor tool. Paid taxes knowing where the funds go. In April, offerings to my mother's slow murder. By May, my sister filled with the bullets I bought. June, and my father's life locked in a box I built. My brother's end plotted as I spend. I don't know why I told you it would be okay. Not, won't. When they aren't killing you, they're killing someone else. Sometimes their hands at the end of your wrist. You, meaning you and me, are agent and enemy. There I was, writing anthems in a nation whose victory was my blood made visible. Mama too sugar to weep without melting. My rage fed their comfort, foaming at my racial mouth, singing gospel for a God they beat me into loving. Lord, your tomorrow holds no sway. Your heaven too late. I abandon you as you did me. C'est la vie. But, sweet Satan, OG Dark kicked out the sky, first fallen and niggered thing. What's good? Who owns it? Where it come from? Satan, First segregation, mother of exile, what you promise in your fire. For a real freedom, I offer over their souls. Theirs, mine's is mine's. I refuse any hell again. I've known near devils, the audience and the mirror. They make you look weak. They clapped at my eulogies. They said, encore, encore. We wanted to stop being killed, and they thanked me for beauty and pitifully. I loved them. I thanked them. I took the awards and cashed the checks. I did the one about the boy when requested, traded their names for followers. In lieu of action, I wrote a book, edited my war cries down to prayers. Oh, devil, they gave me God and gave me clout. They took my poems and took my blades. Satan, like you did for God, I sang. I sang for my enemy, who was my God. I gave it my best. I bowed and worse, smiled. Teach me to never bend again.
My God, there's so much in there. I mean, there is a kind of struggle with that compliance of playing other people's games. I wrote down this phrase afterwards, being demonized. Why that made me think of Milton, but it wasn't just so much that, it was the absolute scope of the poems of this book, which managed to be personal and yet, you know, have such a kind of vast landscape of the imagination in them as well. This poem and others in there radiate an absolute exhaustion of living with those injustices. You know, it makes me wonder what would have happened to you if you weren't in the US, because, you know, that brutalizing past is your subject.
And the thing is, I'll never know, right? I think the hypotheticals that the book and even myself are interested in are the hypotheticals about the future, which feels tangible, right? You know, I can't play the hypotheticals of the past. You know, what if Europeans stayed in Europe? What if Africans, you know, were not whisked away from Africa? What if, you know, what if I didn't live in a country that was, whose success was predicated on, you know, indigenous genocide? Sometimes I talk to British folks, and there is this sense of like, well, nothing bad ever happened here. But it's like, yeah, what did you do in Ireland, bro? Yeah. Like, what did you do in Africa or in the Caribbean or in Asia? Like, let's talk about those places, right? You think about, like, you know, sort of the Winfeld generation, right? These folks who made it to Europe via a bridge of colonization, who are then told that, oh, you never belonged here, you need to go back where you come from. Well, where I come from is so affected by the decisions of Parliament, here. So, yeah, so I imagine if I was still in the world, and I would, especially if I was still Black, there would still be an anti-Blackness to untie no matter where I was born.
Well, it seems to be a bit of a motif, you know, in your earlier poem, Dear White America, it opens, I've left Earth in search of a darker planet. You know, there's that sense of somehow wanting to catapult yourself away from this place. There's a review in The Guardian that was talking about Afro-pessimism. And that kind of annoyed me somehow, because I just think it's so much bigger than Afro-pessimism. It seemed to me a word that diminishes your achievement somehow. But
I disagree. Oh, no.
Do you? That's good.
I do. I felt actually very seen by that review, because I do think part of the exhaustion that you're talking about, right? And it's not, when we look at something like the murder of George Floyd, right? That was not a catalyst of newness, right? It was not, oh my God, we've never seen something this horrible before, we must do something. It was a catalyst of exhaustion, right? And it was, oh my God, it happened again. Let's be real. The uprising or protest, whatever you call it, where the protest in your city happened, that moment would not have happened if the world was not at a standstill in lockdown because of COVID. We would have went to work all the way through it. But because a lot of people weren't working, or you were working from home or whatever, it ignited in a different way. So I think that Afro-pessimism actually explains very well that exhaustion, right? When the business of the world necessitates anti-Blackness, when business as usual in so much of the world is anti-Blackness, even within the Black world, you get that sense of Afro-pessimism, which is this acceptance, inevitability, and exhaustion at the regularity of Black death. And so for that, right, I think I am always trying to pull towards hope. I'm not completely in the Afro-pessimism framework, right? Like there is always this sort of like tugging towards light, tugging towards the future, trying to make something useful and not stagnant out of the energy in these poems that I'm writing. But
Yeah.
surely pessimism is a key feeling in the work, right? Especially in this book in particular.
I stand corrected. One of the brilliant things about this book for me as well was I had to learn all kinds of things while reading it. So, which is one of the things I love about poetry, is I found myself exploring like the history of the do-rag.
Mm-hmm. I imagine you've never had to wear a do-rag in your life.
No, the cultural imperialism of the USA is alive and strong.
Yes.
I was discovering things about Solange Knowles and a halo-like crown over a do-rag and so on.
Yes.
Anyway, in your poem, Jesus Be a Do-Rag, can you explain in your own words what a do-rag is?
Yeah, sure. A do-rag is basically a nightcap that a lot of Black folks wear to protect our hair at night, typically made of silk or some fabric that's been approximated towards silk. A nice little polyester situation. But yeah, it just protects your hair from breakage. That's its functional use, right? And I think it has also become sort of a stylized icon in the Black community as well. There's a beauty in like wearing your do-rag in the daytime. And even nowadays you see sort of designer do-rags that are literally just meant to be fashion over function.
Yeah.
Which I think is what this poem thinks about. It's after the poet and singer Jamila Woods, who's a good friend. And if you don't know her music or her poetry, you should definitely check her out. Jesus be a do-rag and be mighty. Black, saddened savior stretched around my scalp. Take me in your hand and make me like the water. Be a way to tell my people I am their people. Sheer cape falling down my neck, make me superhero. Captain, save a hoe from myself. Rag to make my unragged mornings. Let me wake up black and alive and thinking I'm cute. Lord of lords, be a fence around my fly. Be shield, be rock, be spell, be a dark and lovely magic, sweet Jesus. If you God, be God. Let whatever reaches toward us to end us slip past. Let America drown in our wave. If a bullet must touch us, let it graze soft as a bristle brush. Let us spill no blood on a day we feel beautiful and we be beautiful. Let us know it. Be caskets sharp and banned from early caskets. No Black person will die in this poem, but these waves might hurt somebody. Watch yourself. Swim good. Be happy we sleep with these rags on. I heard a story once about a boy who brushed his hair for 40 days and 40 nights, and when he finally slept, he forgot to wrap his ocean up. Same night, mamas started crawling from his hairline carrying babies. Men climbed out his waves like they had just jumped off the boat. A wet army necromance from naps. See, this hair is a right kind of holy. See, it's not hair at all. On top of our dome, a prayer carrying us home.
That's fantastic. I love the kind of surrealism of all these people creeping out from the hairline.
Yeah.
It's just a wonderful vision.
Thank you. I mean, that's just like, capitalizing on language's possibilities, right? So another thing about do-rags, right, is that you use it, you develop these like waves in your hair that we call waves. So there's several mentions to waves in the poem, right? And that's just like, just making a little, waves. That's an ocean. It's also in the hair, right? So, what little portals and doors does the language allow opportunity for in a poem, right?
Yeah.
If I can talk about my waves, can that relate to the waves in the ocean? And then you end up with something a little surreal.
Yeah. Well, in my researches, I came across the phrase that a do-rag was a symbol of resistance.
Oh, I
You
didn't
know
know
that,
that.
yeah.
Okay,
Well,
sorry. It is. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily think about it as an act of resistance. I think maybe in the terms of against respectability, right? The sort of this thing that can be demonized, right? Just like anything Black people touch can be demonized, or anything that belongs to us can be seen as low culture or violent through the
mm,
most unkind of eyes, right? So maybe there is a bit of resistance in saying, like, I am going to love my Blackness and be proud of it and
mm.
wear it as a flag and wear things that, yes, are deemed very Black and not, aim towards assimilation as some ultimate goal. Like, no, I'm going to retain the parts of myself that make me feel like me. Maybe that's a little bit of resistance. Sure.
In the context of so much struggle, there are almost pastoral moments and celebration in this
Hmm.
book as well. I think
Yeah.
that's why I was worrying at this kind of Afro-pessimism.
No, I hear you. Because I do think some of the reviews, if I can get on my own little soapbox and gripe real quick, very strong strain of protest and resistance and pessimism in the book, and I love that.
Mm,
I think what some of the reviews have missed is that there's also a very strong relation and praxis of love going on,
yes.
both in terms of community, but also personal, smaller, intimate relationships. There's like a lovely little poem in there about my barber. There's a series of poems that try to like complicate and understand domestic violence as it happened in my family. There's straight up love poems for my husband and stuff like that.
I'm going to ask you to read this poem, I-35W, North, Downtown Exits, because this is about your hometown, isn't it?
Yeah, it's literally sort of thinking about one of my favorite views in Minneapolis when you're coming up the freeway from the south. You get a lovely, lovely landscape of downtown as you're driving in, and it's gorgeous. I see it at least a couple times a week when I'm driving up from something in the south of suburbs. Cool. I-35W North, downtown exits. Minneapolis, my murderer, my mother's ship, my moose heart, my mercy will end in you. Nearing your southern face, you almost look safe. So beautiful, you could stare too long and miss the ice. Winter, the most innocent killer here. I remember you purple blaze when Prince passed, the sky plum stained, bridges bruised violet, so gorgeous, you liar. You didn't miss him. You wanted money for his missing. Minneapolis, my liar, my murdered mother, my mercy road killed, my ship belly burial in a frozen lake. Your promise is death done nicely. A smile, a sorry with your bullets. You kneel never at altars. Your kneeling praise the fathers away. Dresses streets in flame. You're the only thing to burn and come out whiter. Where the people raged, you built a business. I don't trust your purple lights, red on blue on red on blue. I don't trust your purple. The cops could be anywhere.
I mean, it's a kind of cliche to say that the location is a character. I was almost feeling I was reading a novel. What does Minneapolis mean to you? Have you spent all your life there?
It means a lot to me. I moved away for college, for grad school, for other things. I always come back. There's an electricity here that I understand, just by it being home, having so many family and friends here. It's not the perfect place. There's a lot to be desired. There are things I wish I could borrow from Chicago or New York or London or Berlin and make happen here. But I understand it, which means that I also feel like it's the most tangible place for me, or not tangible, malleable place for me. When I think about, changing the world and how large and sometimes impossible of a task that can feel. I understand that changing the world sometimes just means like changing what you can and what you can touch and what's around you. And for that reason, I feel a connection to here because I feel like I am in a place that I know I can change. I think it was the pandemic. I was so ready to leave during the pandemic. I had a fellowship that was supposed to be on the East Coast. I was so ready to move to New York and just get out of here. I was feeling a little bit nomadic and just was ready to be done with Minneapolis. But lockdown and then the digital school year that happened between 2020 and 2021 forced me to stay here. And I, through the uprising and organizing, volunteering, and falling in love with a man who's now my husband, I really dug deeper roots in a way that I think. And the pandemic really settled me and gave me a second life and a new love for this place. And so I'm very grateful. If there is anything to be grateful for from that tumultuous time, it is that it gave me an opportunity to re-meet and recommit myself to this place. And I love it.
I don't trust your purple.
Mm-hmm.
The blue on blue on red. It's a reference I'm not picking up.
Well, the purple, it's a very purple city in that, you know, Prince being his color is purple, right? And so whenever there's like a Prince thing, everything's in purple. One of our big sports teams is the Minnesota Vikings, who are also called the Purple People Eaters. It's a very purple jersey. So there's a lot of that. If blue on red, right, is this is sort of the color of police sirens, right? It's sort of making me mistrust that combination of colors elsewhere, which could be in like, you know, earlier in the poem, how the city sort of, you know, was very purple lit when Prince passed away. And also, you know, it's football season now, American football season here now. And so you see everybody in purple, right? There's this like purpleized unity that we have around this sport. And yet I cannot trust the briefness and the hollowness of some of that purple football based uniformity and and is ephemeral and brief. So I don't trust the purple in this little purple book.
Okay, we're going to move on to I'm not bold, I'm fucking traumatized.
Okay, great.
Which I just think is one of my favorite titles.
Word. This is an old one that I like dug up and was like, oh, there's actually something here. I'm not bold, I'm fucking traumatized. 1. Same niggas I write poems for call me faggot and my utopia shrinks. Who really do I mean by we? 2. When you say bravery, I think, what else? Don't we all brave a thing? Even just the dark, through it, or deeper, darker still. I talk so loud because I'm trying to find the door. 3. I'm not every nigga. They not all in me. I'm not that damn large. I contain multitudes of little shit that only adds up to a basic me. I only know a tiny percentage of all the black people. When I say black people, I mean what I've confirmed in small circles of the niggas I know. By niggas I know, I mean niggas I choose, and I choose them all. I really do mean to, but surely there's a list of niggas I'd rather not allow into my heaven. Absolutely a list of black folks I pray toward hell. 4. Like, do black presidents get to go to heaven? Or people who beat their children to relieve stress? Is the nigga who raped me gonna be in Thug Mansion too? How heavy is my stone on his scale? How much and what kinds of violence are allowed within God's love? I know love is some shit I'll never get, 'cause my grandma hopes my grandpa is waiting for her in heaven. Wings closed into a fist on his back. 5. I have like 4 white friends, maybe a dozen if I'm being generous, and that feels brave enough. You know what I'm talking about. All the little deaths in there loving you. All of them. Read Citizen if you need that lesson. Every teacher those 3 semesters I got to know a deeper sad added citizen to the syllabus late. Every one of their white hands handing me what I had already read and knew, and they were so amazed. And with Trump, the opportunity for us to, quote, finally write political poems. And it was like they were just opening their eyes. And all of us once shadows had shapes, proper names. 6. Does it bother you when somebody talks about your people as a concept right in front of your face? What does your skin feel like when it's evaporating into theory? Mine, like sugar dissolving in the sleeping mouth, taking the tooth with it. 7. The problem with being a poet is the line so thin it's not a line where your history, personal, becomes your history, collective. Some folks in my family can't get that to tell my story, I have to confess theirs. We are not stains in the lives of others, not wind, nor flat afters, nor tricks of light. We have shapes and make noise and make scars and disturb and interrupt and salve and slave and slip so easy from background character to God. Maybe we do start as wind. 8. My people ain't even my people. Their utopia calls for my death and they dress for the occasion. It's some bullshit. It's impossible. I feel bad for poems. All we expect them to hold. The people in my poems don't agree with my ways. My poems shrink. I look to form when my heart feels placed in a blender and left to wait to pulse. That's what it feel like. Feel like when I remember who want me gone and how I love them alive.
One of the lines is the problem with being a poet is the line is so thin, it's not a line where your history personal becomes your history collective. Do you feel that you have to deal with a weight of expectation to somehow represent other people?
No.
Is there a duty?
I don't feel a weight, but I do feel a duty. I think it becomes burdenous when others prompt you to sort of speak for the collective, right? Which, when I think about, brings me very much back to, sort of like certain university classrooms where it's just like, oh, will you please speak on behalf of Black people, or will you please speak on behalf of all the queers right now? Which is an impossible situation to navigate accurately. Yeah, that is what places burden on us, right? But I do think that we do have a duty to speak to the collectivity of all collectives that we belong to, right? Not just along racial lines, which I think is so much of this book, right? But I think hopefully through this book and maybe poems I've written and others, that there is a sense of that we do have a universal solidarity that we owe so much to humanness. I think it shouldn't be such a radical idea that my neighbor's well-being is important to me. The individual is the death of humanity in so many ways. But I think, the artist's job, or the duty that I picked up, is to sort of imagine, one, what the hell is I? What is that? Surely some of the I's in this poem are me, or in these poems are me, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes I'm drawing in other stories, or just straight up making up shit, and putting them all behind that I, right? I have a strong sense of solidarity to like other humans, and so my I does often, as I find a lot of Black authors and authors who let their Blackness inform their work, there is sometimes a we folded behind that I. And sometimes we also do take up that collective fourth person pronoun of the we, right? I love that. I try to handle it responsibly. I do not feel obligated to do so, but I feel compelled to do so. And to me, those are different poles. One is being put on you by somebody else. And I do think I struggled with that as a younger writer. And now I think it is because, no, this is what I would like to say. I would like to say something towards the collective. And I will also take the feedback. It's almost an invitation to the reader, to particular readers, right? To like say, can you imagine yourself in the we that I'm speaking to, right? And there will be times, I think, for different readers where you absolutely can or cannot. But at the most expansive version of what that collective is, do you see yourself as a collaborator towards this future that I'm speaking on?
There's a series of poems that worry the business of poetry. The one on page 119 is perhaps the most optimistic of those. Could you read that for us?
So this is Ars Poetica. Fuck all that other shit. Even when the fog cleared the wrong sky on my mind, the horizon at the end of pity is a useless sun, hot-headed and bitter-born light. Let the daughter rise when my earth meets the clouds. What her say? What next she believe in and nurse? My big bad for how long I spent making apologies for what I ain't do. Caught myself sorries for bodies the nation caught in its borderless maw. Caught myself washing blood off someone else's hands. I'm off that. That being the mode that made a cage of guilt out my depression. That being what fault I fell into and dressed into a lovely but ineffective grave. What I'm sorry for? Making poetry into a house of rebuttals, a temple for the false gods of stagnant argument and dead-end feels. Here, in these lines, in these rooms, I add my blues and my gospels to the record of now. I offer my scratched golds to the blueprint of possible. Dear reader, whenever you are reading this is the future to me, which means tomorrow is still coming, which means today still lives, which means there is still time for beautiful, urgent change, which means there is still time to make more alive, which means there is still poetry.
I think that actually made me want to rush out into the street and kind of anyway, yeah, but this I just think this is such a jolt of optimism, and actually that writing poetry is a worthwhile endeavor. Are there any other media that tempt you, or kind of, could you see yourself writing a novel in future?
Well, I think to that last part, yes, I am writing a novel. Was just clicking on it a little bit this morning before we met. So I'm writing a novel. I'm also writing a play that will go up for a stage reading early next year. Actually, theater was my first love in terms of art. Like that was that was my gateway drug into poetry. I wouldn't have started writing poetry if it wasn't for a very social justice, Augusta Bois-based poetry class that Jan Mandel, who was my theater teacher and is now a collaborator and a coworker and a friend, she was the one who's got me through the door to writing poems. And then other things that sustain me, I feel so indebted to music. I can sing well enough for somebody that you're not expecting to sing. If I had to sing on purpose, I'd probably get horrible reviews. I have 2 rap songs buried somewhere deep on the internet that I hope nobody is ever able to find. I can't find them, and I hope nobody else can either.
And in this book, there's many musical little tells and references.
I was very much raised in the traditions of hip hop. There's a lot of sampling that goes on in my work, sometimes in ways that I think I even don't notice at first, or I'm playing to it. So I kind of sometimes even have to ask myself, ooh, you need to take more detailed notes when you're writing these poems, because even just reading I'm not bold, I'm fucking traumatized a minute ago. That second section totally starts off with like a Whitney Houston record, I'm every woman. I borrow from other poets. I try to market when I borrow from other poets. But yeah, I'm always sort of stealing things from music. And sometimes it's just like, because music lives in my head. And sometimes literally it's like, oh, I'm listening to something and like, that feels useful for the thing I'm writing right now.
I'd like you to read Sioux Falls,
Sioux
because I
Falls,
just think
yeah.
this is such a beautiful love poem. It's just gorgeous, this.
Thank you. I love this one. This is one of my favorites in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so nice. I'm just in danger of repeating myself, but I find that there's so much warmth and, sheer gorgeousness hidden away almost behind all this kind of frowny pessimism. The thing is, there's layers, there's lots of layers.
Yeah.
And people caricature stuff, and you can't caricature poetry really, because there's too much in here.
I really do appreciate that. Thank you. I think your words make me, because sometimes I think I've gotten worried that like I flatten out certain expressions of feeling in the book. And, especially like if you can focus on the pessimism, I think it'd be easy to. There is enough of it here, but I tried to make a lasagna. There's a lot of layers, right? And like,
there are.
Sure, the bolognese is great, but like I worked really hard on the bechamel, And yeah, so there is a lot of these love poems. I think are things even for me making the book. I needed to like buoy feeling in some way, so you just gonna get pulled too far into the darkness, right? Because even from a revolutionary standpoint or a radical standpoint, we won't win any battle by pulling ourselves deeper and deeper into the dark impossible of the thing, right? There has to be light at some point in time that we move towards. Cool. This is Sioux Falls, which is a lovely little town in South Dakota with its own complicated history. Some of that gets in this poem. And it's for my husband. Sioux Falls. Where the water crashes into the quartzite, I love you. Though our joints cuss us for leaping the islands of stone striped by meek rivers, though there is more of us to touch than when we first met as hungry strangers, naked before the socks in my pink jock, I love all that new you folding round as we cross where the ducks are sick of us. Though you hate it, I lay my head there. When I am sick of sound, I rest my ear where you breathe and rumble. I love that gut that I love every day, which you don't notice until we make our way across the water, where the water above meets the water below, and their touch makes a sound like clapping. My hand to my other hand, like the sound of your body crashing into mine in the last brush of dark, the alarm of your want getting us up before the phone's electric morning bell, the bell you make of us love. Like that. The water meeting the water. An applause, gravity bound, an ovation we cross the stones to witness. That joyful noise, older than our families, with these names shipped west to us, shipped us west, moved west, gold hungry, kill happy, shrinking the future, older than those people who gave us those names, their sound waxing, ringing, thinning the earth, older than bells, my love. That sound, I love you near it. How dare I love you here in the evidence of evil? How dare I want you where greed led west to rob beauty everywhere? The end of water or waterlogged endings everywhere, forever, an end of the world. So I look for you if we make it in the night, and should it come the morning, kiss me where the water crashes the water into concert. Take me, my river, my rain, and fall into me.
Wow. When I read that, I wrote this sort of slightly punning phrase underneath. It was overwhelmingly beautiful.
Oh,
but the word over, it was almost drenched. You're immersing people in that feeling. I guess I wanted to ask you about the water as a metaphor. Really, was it just that's where you were, and it seemed like a good idea? Or?
Yeah, I think those poems, there's the series of poems that are just each kind of named after a different place where they literally happened. There was so over the course of a year, me and my now husband just took these vacations to like other places in the Midwest. Well, anyways, like, I was just there and there would be these happenings. I would go down and I had nothing else to do but try to write. And so I was just trying to really capture the moment. Sioux Falls does have like a gorgeous little, like I said, just a gorgeous little waterfall. There's something about nature for me that seeing the person I love and live with, like next to a beautiful body of water, just like really is like, oh, magnificent. The world is so big and wonderful. Oh my God, I must go home and write a poem. It was that it. It was that simple, although I do think water moves throughout a lot of the book, right? Water as sort of sometimes background. In this poem, water is really musical and visual. You have the sort of surreal water of the waves from Jesus is a Do-Rag, right? There's a moment in a poem called Sonnet that's a very visual quadrant-based piece where the water literally starts invading the other quadrants and like causes glitches and all these other things. And so water, poets been using it for years. It's one of the best metaphors. It's so big, but it's just so massive and it does so many things and in itself embodies transformation so well. How can we not turn to water, right? If poetry, for me, one thing we can take from the sonnet is that is true for all poetry, I think, is the volta, right? That something must turn, something must transform. There must be epiphany in some type of way or newness. To me, that's what all poetry does. Every poem should have one, if not several moments that transform, that pivot, that look at the world one way and then turn or widen or something. Poetry should alter us. And so I think for that reason, here's this thing that, whether steam, water, ice, its transformations have changed humanity. And we're bad to it and it might kill us and it can be so calming and it can also drown you and it can be very picturesque and pristine. But if there's a lot of water where there shouldn't be, oh my God, now we have disaster. So yeah, water's just like endless poetry and endless change within itself. How can we not go to it? Yeah.
We'll leave our conversation on that deluge of positivity and the connection of all things.
Right.
Danez Smith, thank you so much for giving us your time,
Peter,
for Planet Poetry.
Thank you. This was such a delightful way to start my day. So I really, really appreciate your questions and your kindness. It's been awesome for me. Thank you.
That's it for today. Thanks very much for listening and watch out for an all-new episode in the spring.